The gunshot shattered the crystal chandelier above table 12. Glass rained down like deadly confetti as Dante Russo's hand moved toward his jacket. But I was already there, my body between him and the barrel aimed at his spine. "Don't move," I whispered, my voice steady despite the terror coursing through my veins. "Just listen." In that frozen moment, with death 3 feet away and my entire world balanced on the edge of a knife, I realized something profound. The invisible girl nobody noticed had just become the only thing standing between Chicago's most dangerous man and a bullet with his name on it. But let me take you back. Back to where this impossible story really began. Back to the moment I learned that being invisible might be the most dangerous superpower of all. My name is Penelope Carter, and I've been a ghost for most of my life. Not the supernatural kind, just the kind that exists in spaces people look through rather than at. At 28, I'd perfected the art of disappearing in plain sight. In my family, in my job, in every relationship I'd ever attempted. Being invisible was safer than being seen, because being seen meant being vulnerable to judgment I'd never survive. The night everything changed started like any other Friday at Valentino's. The restaurant hummed with its usual wealthy crowd, couples celebrating anniversaries, business deals being sealed over expensive wine, the kind of people whose monthly dining budget exceeded my yearly income. I moved through the dining room with practiced efficiency, refilling water glasses and clearing plates while remaining as unobtrusive as humanly possible. "Table 9 needs more bread," Marcus whispered as he passed, balancing 4 entrees on his forearm. "And the gentleman at 12 is asking for you again." My stomach did that familiar flutter it always did when Dante Russo requested my section. 3 months he'd been coming here, always Friday nights, always the same corner table with sight lines to both entrances. Everything about him screamed danger, from the expensive Italian suits to the way other diners gave him a respectfully wide berth. But his tips were generous, his manners impeccable, and he never made me feel small or stupid the way most wealthy customers did. "Good evening, Mr. Russo," I said, approaching his table with the wine he always ordered. A Barolo that cost more than I made in a week. "The usual tonight?" Those dark eyes assessed me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Please, Penelope. And perhaps your recommendation for the entree?" "You've never steered me wrong." The fact that he knew my name, that he asked my opinion like it actually mattered, still caught me off guard after 3 months. In my family, my opinions had never mattered. My father barely acknowledged my existence, too focused on my brother Marcus Jr.'s law career. My mother's disappointment in my wasted potential hung between us like smoke, poisoning every conversation. "Why aren't you more like your brother?" she'd say. "A master's degree in psychology, and you're wasting at waiting tables." What happened to you, Penelope? What happened was that clinical psychology programs required unpaid internships I couldn't afford. That student loans crushed my ability to work for free. That the wasted potential she mourned had been systematically destroyed by the same family that now judged me for surviving their neglect. "The osso buco is exceptional tonight," I told Dante, pushing away the familiar ache of inadequacy. Chef Marco prepared it with his grandmother's recipe. Something shifted in his expression, approval, maybe, or recognition of someone who understood the weight of family expectations. "Then I trust your judgment completely." I was turning to place his order when I noticed them. 3 men positioned around the dining room with the kind of calculated precision that set off every alarm bell my psychology training had installed. Table 6, white male, mid-30s, expensive watch, eyes that tracked Dante's every movement while pretending to focus on his date. The bar, broader build, Mediterranean features, nursing the same whiskey for 40 minutes. Near the restrooms, younger, maybe late 20s, leg bouncing with nervous energy that screamed pre-action anxiety. My master's thesis had focused on behavioral patterns in high-stress situations. I'd studied micro-expressions, body language, the involuntary tells that revealed intention before action. These 3 men displayed every marker I'd learned to recognize: hypervigilance masked as casual awareness, synchronized positioning, the kind of coordinated surveillance that preceded violence. I'd spent 2 years studying criminal psychology before the money ran out. 2 years learning to read the signs that most people missed. And every instinct I'd honed was screaming that something terrible was about to happen. The man at table 6 checked his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. The one at the bar shifted his jacket in a way that suggested he was carrying something heavy beneath it. The youngest near the restrooms had positioned himself with clear sight lines to the emergency exit, the route Dante always used when leaving. You're being paranoid, I told myself. This is Chicago. People wear expensive watches and check the time. They adjust uncomfortable jackets. You're seeing threats that don't exist. But then I caught fragments of conversation as I passed table 6. The man was speaking quietly into his phone, words that turned my blood to ice. 23:45. Back exit. Everything's positioned. I glanced at my watch. 23:30, 15 minutes until whatever they were planning. My hands trembled as I approached the kitchen. This wasn't my problem. Dante Russo was probably exactly the kind of dangerous man these people wanted dead. Getting involved would be stupid. Reckless. The kind of decision that could get an invisible girl noticed in all the wrong ways. Mind your own business, the voice in my head warned. Go home. Pay your bills. Stay invisible. Stay safe. But I thought about 3 months of Friday nights. Of Dante treating me like a person instead of a servant. Of tips that meant I could finally start chipping away at the student debt that had buried my dreams. Of the way he'd noticed when I'd been crying in the storage room after my mother's latest phone call, had quietly left an extra $100 with a note that said simply, for whatever you're fighting through. Maybe he was a criminal. Maybe he deserved whatever these men had planned. But he'd treated me with more kindness than my own family had shown in years. I set down my tray with deliberate care and walked back to table 12. Mr. Russo, I said quietly, leaning forward as if to adjust his place setting. I might be completely wrong, but I think you should stay seated and not move. Something's planned for 11:45. His hand stilled on the wine glass. Those dark eyes sharpened with sudden, dangerous focus. For a heartbeat, the air between us crackled with tension. Explain, he said, voice so low I almost missed it. The words tumbled out in a rush of professional terminology mixed with genuine fear. 3 men. Table 6, the bar, and near the restrooms. They've been watching you for the past hour. Coordinated positioning, synchronized timing, pre-action anxiety behaviors. I heard fragments about 23:45 and the back exit. Something transformed in his posture. A coiling of muscles, a readiness that changed him from elegant dinner companion to apex predator. He reached into his jacket slowly, withdrew his phone, sent a quick message. Done, he said simply. What's done? Insurance. That ghost of a smile. Sharp. Predatory. How certain are you about this assessment? I studied behavioral psychology. Criminal patterns. These men aren't here for dinner, Mr. Russo. They're here for you. What happened next unfolded with military precision. 3 men in dark suits materialized from corners of the restaurant I hadn't even noticed them occupying. The man at table 6 never saw it coming, one moment checking his watch, the next face down with his arm twisted at an unnatural angle. The guy at the bar tried to run but made it exactly 3 steps before disappearing behind a wall of controlled violence. The youngest one bolted for the emergency exit. I lost sight of him in the chaos but heard the muffled sounds that suggested his escape attempt failed spectacularly. Through it all, Dante remained seated, calmly finishing his wine as if orchestrating tactical takedowns was as routine as ordering dessert. We need to leave, he said quietly, standing and placing crisp bills on the table. Now. I can't just abandon my shift, your shift is over. His hand found the small of my back, steering me toward the main entrance with gentle but absolute authority. Trust me when I say you don't want to be here when the police arrive. Outside, a black sedan waited with the engine running. Every rational thought screamed warnings about getting into cars with dangerous men. But what choice did I have? I'd just witnessed something that probably qualified as organized crime, and the only person who could protect me from whatever came next was the man I'd just saved. The interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Dante slid in beside me, maintaining careful distance while somehow still dominating the space. "Where are you taking me?" I asked, proud my voice only shook slightly. "Somewhere safe while we sort this out." "Sort what out?" I don't even know what just happened. Those dark eyes assessed me with new intensity. "You saved my life tonight, Penelope. That tends to complicate things." We drove through Chicago's late-night streets in tense silence. The safe house turned out to be a penthouse apartment in a gleaming tower that touched the clouds. Armed men waited in the lobby, their presence transforming elegance into fortress. "This is temporary," Dante assured me as we rode the private elevator. "Just until we understand the full scope of tonight's events." The apartment was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic city views, furniture that belonged in design magazines, art that probably cost more than most houses. But it was also clearly designed for security rather than comfort. Multiple exit routes, armed guards, the unmistakable infrastructure of protection. Or imprisonment. A woman appeared from the kitchen area, elegant and efficient, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "I prepared the guest room for you, Miss Carter. There are clothes in your size in the closet." "How do you know my size?" The question came out sharper than intended. "We're very thorough in our research," she replied smoothly. "I'm Sophia Romano, Mr. Russo's assistant. If you need anything, please let me know." Research. They'd been researching me. Watching me. Knowing things about my life that I'd never shared. "How long have you been watching me?" I asked Dante after Sophia left. "Since the first night I came to Valentino's." No hesitation, no apology. "You interested me. The way you read people, noticed patterns most miss. Someone with your observational skills is either extremely dangerous or extremely valuable. So which am I?" His smile was sharp as broken glass. "Tonight proved you're both." I didn't sleep. How could I? Every sound made me jump, every shadow held potential threats. By dawn, I'd worn a path in the expensive carpet from pacing, my mind racing through everything I knew about organized crime from my criminology studies. Dante Russo was clearly Mafia. The kind of dangerous man my professors had warned us about, charming, controlled, capable of orchestrating violence with the same ease most people used to order coffee. I'd saved his life, which meant I was now entangled in whatever war he was fighting. Entangled in a world where invisibility might no longer protect me. The panic attack hit me before I was fully conscious. My chest constricted, air becoming impossible to draw. The elegant bedroom walls closed in, transforming from sanctuary to prison cell. I was going to disappear, become another statistic, another missing person whose case would gather dust in some detective's filing cabinet. "Breathe," I told myself, counting to 4 on each inhale, holding for 4, exhaling for 6. The technique Dr. Martinez had taught me during therapy after my breakdown. Back when panic attacks were about family rejection and shattered dreams, not about being held captive by criminals. Sophia appeared with breakfast and coffee, moving with quiet efficiency that suggested she'd dealt with traumatized houseguests before. "Mr. Russo would like to speak with you when you're ready." "And if I'm not ready?" "Then he'll wait." "But Miss Carter, the longer you wait, the more questions you'll have, and the fewer answers will satisfy you." She was right. I'd spent the night constructing increasingly elaborate theories about who Dante Russo was and what I'd gotten myself into. None of them were particularly comforting. I found him in an office surrounded by monitors displaying security feeds from various locations around the city. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black sweater, looking younger and somehow more dangerous in casual clothes. "Sleep well?" he asked without turning from the screens. Did you expect me to? No. But I hoped. He swiveled to face me. How much do you know about organized crime in Chicago, Penelope? Only what everyone knows. That it exists. That people get hurt. That normal people try to stay as far away from it as possible. Smart policy. He stood, moving to pour coffee. Unfortunately, no longer an option for you. Because you witnessed Marco Santini attempting to have me killed. And because your intervention allowed my men to capture 2 of his people alive. Santini will assume you're working with me. That makes you a target. The casual way he delivered this death sentence made my knees weak. For how long? Until Santini is no longer a problem. And how long will that take? That depends on how smart he is. Dante handed me a cup of coffee, his fingers brushing mine briefly. And how quickly he realizes his war with my family was always going to end only one way. Family. The word carried weight I was only beginning to understand. The first week of captivity taught me the subtle rhythms of Dante's world. How conversation stopped when he entered rooms. The way grown men twice my size deferred to his quiet authority. The careful dance of power that played out in gestures too small for outsiders to notice but too significant for insiders to ignore. I spent my days pacing the penthouse like a caged animal, testing the boundaries of my imprisonment. Every door led to rooms I wasn't supposed to enter. Every window was 40 stories above ground. Every exit was monitored by men who smiled politely while making it clear that leaving wasn't an option. But what surprised me most was Dante himself. He checked on me regularly, brought food when I forgot to eat, adjusted pillows when he caught me wincing from stress headaches. Each interaction was careful, controlled, but underneath the careful control, I sensed something else. Something that made my pulse quicken in ways that had nothing to do with fear. Tell me about your family, he said one evening, settling beside me on the sofa with 2 glasses of wine. The question caught me off guard. Why? Because I want to understand the woman who saved my life instead of minding her own business. So I told him. About growing up invisible in a family that only saw my brother's achievements. About my mother's disappointment that I'd wasted my potential on waitressing instead of becoming a clinical psychologist. About the student loans that had crushed my dreams before they'd fully formed. About the master's degree I'd worked so hard for, only to discover that the clinical hours required for licensing meant working for free, something I couldn't afford when rent and loan payments consumed every dollar I earned. My mother called me a failure, I said quietly, the wine-loosening words I'd never spoken aloud. Said I was wasting my life, throwing away opportunities she'd sacrificed to give me. But she never asked why I couldn't take those unpaid internships. Never offered to help. Just judged me for not being more like Marcus Jr., who had the luxury of family support while building his career. Dante's expression softened. They're idiots. The blunt assessment startled a laugh out of me. They're my family. That doesn't make them less idiotic. He topped off my wine glass. You have a master's degree in psychology. You can read behavioral patterns most trained professionals miss. You saved my life by recognizing surveillance patterns in a crowded restaurant. That's not failure, Penelope. That's extraordinary. Something cracked open in my chest. When was the last time someone had called me extraordinary instead of disappointing? My mother died when I was 15, Dante said quietly. Poisoned by someone we trusted. Someone who sat at our table, who my father considered family. It taught me never to trust anyone completely. He paused. Until tonight, I would have said that policy had served me well. Understanding dawned. But I'm someone you're being forced to trust. No. You're someone I'm choosing to trust. There's a difference. The air between us shifted, charged with something I couldn't name but felt everywhere, in the narrowing space between our bodies, in the way his gaze dropped briefly to my mouth before returning to my eyes. This is insane, I whispered. I barely know you. I know. His hand came up to cup my face with surprising gentleness. But I've never been more certain of anything. When he kissed me, it felt like inevitability. Soft at first, questioning, testing boundaries neither of us had acknowledged existed. When I didn't pull away, when my hands gripped his shirt, it deepened. His other hand found my waist, careful and reverent. We broke apart, both breathing hard. This complicates things, he said quietly. Everything about my life is already complicated. His smile was sharp as a blade and twice as dangerous. Then maybe we stop fighting it. 2 weeks of living in Dante's world had transformed me in ways I was still processing. The invisible girl who'd spent her life avoiding attention had become central to the operations of Chicago's most dangerous crime family. My psychology background proved invaluable for vetting new recruits, identifying potential threats, reading the behavioral patterns that kept Dante's organization secure. But more than that, I'd found something I'd never expected in a penthouse that should have felt like a prison. I'd found a place where my skills mattered. Where I mattered. Dante gave me access to his operations in ways that should have terrified me but instead felt like coming home. He asked my opinion on personnel decisions, used my behavioral assessments to identify potential problems before they became fatal, treated my expertise with the respect my own family had never shown. You have a gift, he told me one evening after I'd identified a mole in his security team through careful observation of micro-expressions during a routine meeting. The way you read people, it's not just education. It's instinct. And it's keeping us all alive. The compliment should have felt manipulative. Instead, it felt like recognition. Like finally being seen. But the night everything changed started with a phone call that turned Dante's expression to stone. They have Marco, he said, his voice deadly calm. Santini's people took my cousin from his apartment 3 hours ago. Ice flooded my veins. I'd met Marco twice, a young man barely 25, sweet and earnest, who treated me with the same respect Dante demanded from all his people. What do they want? Territory. Concessions. Things I can't give without appearing weak. His hands curled into fists. But more than that, they want to prove they can hurt me. That caring about people makes me vulnerable. I thought about Marco's easy smile, the way he'd helped me learn the complex dynamics of Dante's organization without judgment. What are you going to do? Get him back. Absolute certainty. And make sure Santini understands the cost of taking what's mine. How can I help? He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw vulnerability beneath the dangerous crime boss facade. You've already done enough. This isn't your world, Penelope. You shouldn't have to stop. I moved closer, taking his hands. You've spent 2 weeks telling me I belong here. That my skills matter. So let me help. Let me use what I know to bring Marco home. Something shifted in his expression. It's dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. But I'm choosing it anyway. His smile was fierce and proud. Then let's go to war. The rescue operation unfolded with the precision I'd come to expect from Dante's organization. My behavioral analysis helped identify which of Santini's men could be turned, which were loyal enough to die for their boss, which would panic under pressure and make mistakes. I positioned myself as bait, the naive girlfriend who'd gotten caught up in Mafia violence, desperate to negotiate Marco's release. The wire I wore transmitted everything back to Dante's team, hidden in the surveillance van 2 blocks from the warehouse where they were holding Marco. Please, I begged Santini, letting my voice shake with genuine fear. Marco didn't do anything. He's just a kid. Let him go. Santini studied me with cold calculation. You're Russo's woman. That makes you leverage. I'm nobody, I insisted. Just a waitress who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But my psychology training had taught me to read behavioral cues, and what I saw in Santini's expression made my blood run cold. He wasn't planning to negotiate. He was planning to use both Marco and me to destroy Dante completely. The raid happened with explosive precision. Dante's men breached from 3 different entry points, overwhelming Santini's guards before they could react. In the chaos, I moved toward Marco, cutting his restraints with the knife Sophia had concealed in my jacket lining. "Come on," I urged, helping him toward the exit route Dante had mapped. But Santini had one final card to play. He emerged from cover, gun aimed not at me but at Marco, forcing a choice he knew would destroy Dante either way. "Drop your weapons," Santini commanded. "Or the kid dies, and Russo's woman watches." In that frozen moment, with death 3 feet away and everything balanced on a knife's edge, I understood something profound. I'd spent my whole life invisible because I'd believed I had no power. But invisibility had taught me to observe, to read situations, to see what others missed. And right now, I saw Santini's tell, the involuntary micro-expression that revealed he was bluffing. His finger wasn't on the trigger. His stance was defensive rather than aggressive. He was buying time, not executing a plan. "He's not going to shoot," I said calmly, my voice carrying absolute certainty. "He can't afford to kill either of us. We're his only leverage, and dead hostages have no value." Dante's eyes met mine across the warehouse. Trust and pride and something deeper flickering in their depths. Santini's hesitation cost him everything. Dante's men moved with coordinated precision, disarming him before he could adjust his strategy. Later, after Marco was safe and Santini was handled, Dante found me sitting on the steps outside the warehouse, adrenaline finally giving way to trembling exhaustion. "You were incredible," he said, settling beside me. "The way you read him, called his bluff, you saved Marco's life." "I just did what you've been teaching me." "Trusted my instincts." "No." His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. "You've always had those instincts. I just helped you believe in them." 6 months transformed everything. I moved from captivity to partnership, from invisible waitress to essential member of Dante's operations. My title was behavioral consultant, but the reality was more complex. I'd become his most trusted advisor, the person who saw threats before they materialized and read people in ways that kept his organization secure. My family's response to my transformation was predictable. My mother called me a criminal. My father demanded I distance myself from that man. Marcus Jr. threatened to have Dante investigated if I didn't come to my senses. But I'd found something in Dante's world that I'd never found in theirs: respect. Value. A place where being seen wasn't dangerous but essential. "Marry me," Dante said one evening, the casual proposal catching me completely off guard. "What?" "Marry me." He pulled out a ring that probably cost more than my student debt. "Not because you're trapped here or because I need leverage. But because I choose you. Every single day, I choose you." Tears burned my eyes. "My family will never accept this." "Then build a new family. With me. With people who see your value instead of measuring it against impossible standards." I thought about 28 years of being invisible. Of desperately seeking approval from people who would never offer it. Of believing I was a failure because I couldn't meet expectations designed to ensure I'd always fall short. "Yes," I whispered. His smile transformed his entire face. "Yes? Yes. I choose you too." The wedding was small, private, held in a garden that overlooked the city. My family didn't attend, I hadn't invited them. Instead, I was surrounded by the people who'd become my real family: Sophia, who'd taught me to navigate this dangerous world; Marco, who called me his sister; the men and women who'd learned to trust the quiet woman who saw what others missed. And Dante, whose love had taught me that being seen wasn't dangerous when you were with someone who truly valued what they saw. 3 years later, I stood in the conference room of Russo Security Consulting, the legitimate business that covered our less legal operations, reviewing psychological profiles for potential recruits. My reputation as Dr. Penelope Carter Russo had spread beyond Dante's organization. Law enforcement agencies, corporations, even other families sought my expertise in behavioral analysis. I'd taken my wasted master's degree and built something extraordinary with it. Not in the traditional clinical setting my mother had envisioned, but in a world where understanding human behavior meant the difference between life and death. My family reached out occasionally. Awkward calls where my mother asked about my unusual career choice and my father suggested I could still turn things around. But their approval no longer mattered. I'd learned that the only validation I needed was my own. Dante appeared in the doorway, his presence still making my pulse quicken after 3 years of marriage. The Martinez brothers just arrived for their evaluation. I reviewed their files one last time, noting the behavioral markers that would determine whether they joined our organization. This was my world now, reading people, protecting the family I'd chosen, using skills my original family had dismissed as wasted potential. Ready? Dante asked. I looked at him, this dangerous man who'd seen value where others saw failure, who'd given me space to become who I was always meant to be. Always, I said. Because the invisible girl nobody noticed had become someone who saw everything. And in learning to be seen, I'd discovered that the most powerful thing you could be wasn't invisible or invulnerable. It was absolutely, unapologetically yourself. My name is Penelope Carter Russo. And this is only the beginning.